Yeah. This was the argument that he presented.
In war, civilians
100 to 1 ratio. 100 to 1 ratio.
Yes.
100 to 1 ratio.
Yes, they get.
Okay, so obviously this is his argument, 100 to 1 ratio, and then later on, Pierce asked him, where does this? What's the source for this? And I mean, this is important because Hijab has talked about in the past that it's important to get. Sorry, I'm trying to find the place here. It's important to get the primary source.
AP, you want to break down what, because we all went to the source and we found a couple of them, but they were reporting on what the IDF actually says. And this is amazing because if non-Muslims were to make a criticism of Islam or something like that, and we were to as massively misrepresent a source as Hijab just, we would never hear the end of it. We would be told for the rest of our lives that we are bigots somehow, and we are deliberately deceptive and so on if we completely misrepresent a source like this. But AP, what's going on with this 100 to 1 thing?
Yeah, so what Mohammed Hijab did, and this was his main point, which he presented from beginning to end the entire time, was that there is a combatant to non-combatant ratio, or non-combatant to combatant of 100 to 1. So Israel killed 100 civilians and one Hamas member, on average. And he said that he referenced a Guardian article. He said he read this in the Guardian. It's also found in different sources. Some of them specify it more clearly, but the Guardian article especially, since he was sort of referencing that, according to his claim, the Guardian article says that the IDF told them that they killed dozens of Hamas members so far. If that was true, it would be accurate. There were thousands of civilian deaths and only dozens of Hamas members dead. The article, however, doesn't say such a thing. What the article says immediately in the title is Israeli airstrikes on Gaza have killed dozens of Hamas commanders, according to the IDF, not members, commanders. There's a huge difference here.
Yeah, so the absurdity here is Hijab reads this, and again, it's right in the title. It's dozens of commanders, and it says about 60. And he even says, when he's arguing, he says, "Oh, 60, we'll just give you we'll give the benefit of the doubt, and we'll 100 to 10,000. So it's a 100-1 ratio for every Hamas member that you're actually killing. You're killing 100 civilians." And no, it doesn't say anything like that. They're talking about the number of Hamas commanders that they killed. And so the number of Hamas members, the general Hamas fighters that they've killed, would be significantly higher. And so the entire 100 to 1 ratio is based on Mohammed Hijab literally not being able to interpret a headline correctly, let alone the rest of the article. I mean, he can't get the headline right.
Let's not give him the benefit of the doubt because he doesn't deserve it. He's a liar and he's a fabricator. First of all,
that's true.
To say that he couldn't interpret it, of course he could. He just lied. He is a liar. He is a fabricator. If he told me it were nighttime outside right now, I would absolutely go and check because I don't believe a thing that he says. I'm not even sure what kind of Muslim he is. I'm not sure of anything. I actually think he's a very shallow attention seeker, and I think he misrepresents Islam. And I bet if he was in a debate with a real Islamic scholar, the scholar would wipe the floor with him. So I don't know what he is. But let's just go through this for a second. So first of all, you're showing me that the source says commanders, and he ignored that. He ignored it intentionally. Now, secondly, the Guardian, even if that word wasn't there, the Guardian is one of the least credible sources on Israel imaginable. They are known for their unbridled hostility to Israel and have been called on endless falsehoods about Israel over the decades. And I know many of them myself. Number 3, no one knows civilian casualties in Gaza because Hamas runs the health ministry and their numbers cannot be trusted. Now, you would think that the Red Cross would know something, but the Red Cross has failed miserably, like all the other international organizations, the NGOs, because they have all given Hamas carte blanche to run Gaza, to run UNRWA, the UN. They've all embarrassed themselves by allowing Hamas to steal all the money, misrepresent facts, control the schools, control the hospitals. Al-Shifa, we now have the proof, was a military base, but who allowed it? Who paid for it? Al-Shifa was paid for by international donations. Why was it never monitored? So we don't know how many civilians have died either. And in the fog of war, these things are not going to be known. So the whole point was an absurdity. But the most important point in rebutting that, knowing that the numbers were fraudulent, is that the mere argument that more civilians are going to die as collateral casualties, collateral damage, to even surgical strikes is not itself a moral argument, because no one wants civilians to die. When you have an enemy that embeds themselves specifically within a civilian population and literally fires rockets from nurseries and from kindergartens, from people's homes, of course, when you try to eliminate that threat, and President Biden made it clear that Israel's allowed or should press this military advantage until such time as Hamas can no longer kill Israelis, then civilians are going to die. That's a tragedy. And every single one of those civilians is on Israel. Now, the question then becomes, but how many? How many will you allow to die when they're embedded? That's an almost impossible question to answer, because it all depends on the level of the threat. Now, Harry Truman, this is all just a generation ago, 2 generations ago, Harry Truman made a calculation in the summer of 1945 that he was prepared to allow 75,000 Japanese to die in an instant, and then 100,000 to die in Nagasaki in an instant, in order to save, say, 1 million American men, servicemen who would have to invade the Japanese islands. And we can debate this till this very day, but that was his calculation. Was it going to be 1 million? We don't know. He could only say that based on the best military advice that he had at the time. Now, and the other point is, of course, that the British, now we have much more precision munitions, we have GPS, laser-guided missiles, etc. But even in the Second World War, when Churchill did carpet bomb Dresden, did carpet bomb Hamburg and Cologne and Essen and Berlin, and the Americans, even before they dropped atomic bombs, they did carpet bomb most of Japan. The British did nighttime raids where they didn't know what they couldn't see a thing. The Americans were doing daytime precision bombing because they thought it was more moral and they wanted to go after military targets. Malcolm Gladwell wrote an amazing book about this called The Bomber Mafia that's really worth reading. But Churchill dismissed that. He said, I'm going to break the will of the enemy to fight. And he defined the enemy as the civilian population, because that's how Hitler also defined it through his Battle of Britain. Now, we can debate whether that was right or not. We can't debate Churchill's legacy as the greatest statesman of the 20th century, which is universally recognized except by Mohammed Hijab. So, does Israel kill too many civilians? Absolutely not. Israel loses so many soldiers by doing surgical strikes. Number 2, if Israel wanted to kill civilians, they would have carpet bombed and flattened Gaza in 2007 when it first became a Hamas stronghold and they first started firing rockets. Israel has not done that. I'm going to have to go in a moment, gentlemen, and I really enjoyed this. In fact, I'd even be prepared to continue it. But I want to just tell one story. I went to the killing fields just outside of Gaza right after the attacks. I was there 4 or 5 days after the attacks. I saw the blood congeal to 3 inches. I saw the knives. I saw the Jewish bodies had all been removed. The terrorists, a lot of the bodies were there reeking, and they were left there on purpose in order to determine who they were, what kind of intelligence could be. But you can't leave the victims lying like that, of course. But what I saw, I'll never forget. And I've seen some horrible things in my life. I was in Haiti in 2011. 2 days after the earthquake, where 250,000 bodies were crushed under concrete. And still what I saw outside of Gaza was much more horrific because of all the blood, et cetera, et cetera.